I must take your fingerprints for the investigation.
But of course, do your job, Inspector.
Thanks. I need you to enlighten me on a point. I could not have imagined that Jones could be such a bastard. And between us, I have the impression that you are not much better than him.
I thank you for the compliment, Inspector Norm. You can think whatever you want of me. My conscience is clear. I am, anyway, truly sorry to learn that Clara's father has serious health problems. I did everything to ensure that the Jones Company fall back in the lap of the Jones family. After all, the Jones grandchildren are not so blameworthy as to lose everything.
Walter Jones was not fond of Clara.
Walter Jones certainly asked me to find out about the chances of buying back Clara's father's consulting firm. I was supposed to advise Walter on the optimal moment to buy back the firm, at the best price, obviously.
I think that Walter Jones was unfair to Christina. I find her rather pleasant. Do you think, like him, that she's a gold digger without any scruples? After all, she could also have been interested in the estate.
Walter Jones didn't handle people with kid gloves, and Christina Bromsky was no exception, Inspector. Walter knew that Christina was manipulative and scheming. He was also well informed of Christina's limits. I don't think she will succeed in diverting the estate for her profit, despite her physical assets, which are obvious to the eyes, if I might dare say so.
This man was a damn maniac. He seemed to fuss over these weapons with great diligence.
Walter Jones was a great hunter who did not let anyone take care of the maintenance of his guns. He shut himself for long hours in his office. Later, the whole room smelled of flax oil that he used abundantly to shine the wood of his rifles. I surprised him cleaning his guns the very afternoon of his death when I joined him for work.
So Lorenzo was formerly a biathlon champion. He hid this talent from me, you see. I suppose he didn't lose any of his qualities as a sharpshooter.
Lorenzo definitely knows how to shoot. He often borrowed a rifle from Walter. To distract himself, he enjoyed shooting gulls from the window of his studio. I confess that he had developed a certain expertise in this activity. He claimed that the acidic excrement from these birds was likely to prematurely endanger certain ornamental sidings that decorated the summit of the tower.
Did Walter Jones wear this chain around his neck?
No doubt about it. This one looks a lot like it.
This family photo is very touching. I imagine that you learned to shoot because you have a gun in your hands?
Well, this photo was taken in Tanzania. That year I was very much part of the hunting party, even though I never liked to shoot animals. At the time, Walter loved taking his grandchildren on safari. He maintained that it contributed to their education.
I found fingerprints on the gun which was used to kill Walter Jones. Did you use this gun recently?
I swear I never used this rifle. I swear it, you hear?
I get it.
Correct match.
But why did you manipulate this rifle, Hubert de Nolant?
Ask all the questions you'd like to ask. I'm at your service.
Explain to me why this gun has your fingerprints, Mr. Nolant.
I knew that I ought to have told you from the beginning, but I was afraid that you would suspect I was the murderer. When I saw that something was turning out badly between Baena and Walter, I took this rifle and I removed the eyepiece to observe what was going on. Now, I was more than 200 meters away, and it was thanks to this rifle scope that I could distinguish Baena, who was pushing Walter over the edge. But the idea of shooting at Walter never crossed my mind. Why would I have killed him? He who made my career and generously remunerated me for my services.
You already lied to me. Now you want me to believe that you did not make use of this gun? How do you want me to believe you again, Nolant? I must take your fingerprints for the investigation.
Okay, Jack Norm.
Thanks. You see this rogatory commission? Well, it gives me the right to rummage through all the nooks and corners of this tower, including your personal properties and items, take note. What did Walter Jones tell you regarding his estate?
Jones had a lot of money, Jack Norm, but no one knows into whose hands it will go.
The autopsy is categorical. Walter Jones died from a bullet wound in his back, and not as a result of his fall from the Tortoise Belvedere. With all the doubts stemming from the circumstances, Baena has nothing to do with the death. Nevertheless, I would love to have your point of view on this.
It is clear Baena never killed Walter Jones. Only an idiot could have thought that.
What were you doing at the hour of the crime, around 11 p.m.?
I passed the whole evening in my cabin waiting for my daughter.
With regard to Walter Jones, everyone plays the victim. But some people didn't refrain from trying to make him fall from his perch.
Walter Jones was not crazy. He was old, that's all.
Did Walter Jones wear this chain around his neck?
Yes, I think this is Walter Jones's. I remember he always wore this necklace with a key.
Colio, I know that yesterday Baena did not stay in your company all evening. Can someone confirm what you were doing at the time?
No, Jack, but I know that I did not come near Walter Jones the whole evening. That should be enough for you.
Do you know if Walter Jones was wearing something around his neck on the night of his death?
That evening? I do not know, Norm.
Do you know how to use a rifle?
No, I do not need a rifle, Jack Norm. There is nothing to hunt here. There are only gulls, and they are not good.
Do you know who in this tower knows how to use a gun?
I saw Lorenzo shoot at the gulls. He is very good at it. He brought one down almost each time. But he is not the one who killed Walter Jones, that is for sure.
Did you see anyone in the library the evening of the murder?
My cabin was very far from old Jones's library, Jack Norm. It is still today.
Thank you for the information.
This storm is horrible. One has to hope that the water doesn't rise more, Inspector. Do you want something from me?
Excuse me, I am distracted. I have what I need. See you later. I need a key. I need a key. I must take your fingerprints for the investigation.
I guess that in an investigation, it's an unquestionable classic.
Thanks. You see this Rogatory Commission? Well, it gives me the right to rummage through all the nooks and corners of this tower, including your personal properties and items, take note. The autopsy is categorical. Walter Jones died from a bullet wound in his back, and not as a result of his fall from the Tortoise Belvedere. With all the doubts stemming from the circumstances, Baena has nothing to do with the death. Nevertheless, I would love to have your point of view on this.
Killed by bullets? That's really very disturbing, Inspector. I don't know who could have an interest in killing my wife's grandfather. I'm having a hard time believing that one of the heirs of Mr. Jones could be mixed up with this business. Really. He was, after all, their grandfather. The guilty party is without doubt a native of the island. These people are still roughnecks.
What were you doing at the hour of the crime, around 11 p.m.?
I spent the evening with everyone else at the restaurant between 9:45 p.m. and 11:30 p.m., Inspector. After Mr. Jones left at around 10 p.m., I started watching television with my spouse. The programs were not very interesting, and when my brother-in-law Billy suggested a hand of poker, I was more than willing. Sonia and Clara didn't want to play, so we started a game with just the three of us, Billy, Christina, and me. We talked about Walter Jones's effort that morning at seducing us. Very artful, but no one was taken in by the old man. Jones was a wily fox, and I have the impression that he dragged us into a trap from which we won't get out undamaged. My wife, who had left for a short while, rejoined us. I remember that she was very irritated to find us talking about the issue of the inheritance of her grandfather's estate. I was tired, and the mood had become strained, so I vanished into my room. Sonia came and joined me a little later.
With regard to Walter Jones, everyone plays the victim. But some people didn't refrain from trying to make him fall from his perch.
Listen, Inspector. It was publicly known that Walter Jones was no longer the same man after he had his accident. The procedure that we initiated to have him put under psychiatric care was perfectly logical. The old man was no longer of sound mind, and he wasn't even able to understand that he ought to pass on responsibility.
If the heirs had thought of inheriting, it seems they're off to a rather rocky start. What do you think?
Old Man Jones manipulated us all. I truly regret not having taken the procedure of putting him under psychiatric care to its conclusion. It is now clear that he had lost his mind, and that he was getting ready to disinherit all his grandchildren.
What did you get in return for rescinding that Walter Jones be put under psychiatric care?
I suppose that Hubert de Nolan told you that I was behind this initiative of putting him under psychiatric care. And yes, I acknowledge that without any shame. The shares of the Jones Company had been dramatically down for a while, which was not surprising in any case. Walter Jones had become a paranoid and dangerous old man for the viability of his corporation. He had endangered it by his irrational decisions. I understood that he was going to lose all his wealth. He had to be stopped before he led himself to ruin and took his grandchildren with him. But the old man had it in for us. We should never have signed this document. It's a mistake that will cost us very dearly because my wife and her brothers will get nothing. I am convinced of that now.
Did Walter Jones wear this chain around his neck?
I have no idea.
Do you know if Walter Jones was wearing something around his neck on the night of his death?
Honestly, I don't remember, Inspector.
Do you know how to use a rifle?
You're informing me that our host was killed by the shot from a rifle, and now you're asking me if I know how to use a weapon. This is all a little too obvious, don't you think, Inspector? And even if all this turned out to be precise, I would avoid boasting around you, wouldn't I, Inspector?
Do you know who in this tower knows how to use a gun?
I don't have the foggiest idea, Inspector. You know I don't know Mr. Jones's circle very well.
Did you see anyone in the library the evening of the murder?
I never set foot in this library, Inspector. I therefore cannot help you at all.
Sure, I see.